Is it really such a fool's errand to ask for a good horror game? Alone in the Dark is a game that tries super hard to convince you that it's a scary survival horror game. Unfortunately, what it really is a piece of shit 6-hour game with some of the most infuriating combat, hilariously terrible story and puzzles that would make an 8-year-old laugh. The writing is probably the most painful one, cause I'm a really big fan of Michael Hedberg's previous work. What struck me at first, besides the mediocre graphics, terrible animation and laughable voice acting, was how the characters are written. They are what I would call aliens. They barely react to what is happening to them, they have no interesting insight into anything, they act as if these insane visions and monsters are just another day. Their conversations are even fucking stranger.
Hey, detective. What are you doing?
Oh, I found some.
Great. Was it alcohol?
God, no, I just got the wind knocked out of me. I think I know how to break the contract with the Dark Man.
What exactly does that mean?
Everything going back to normal.
Alright. I found some more information on Dorsetto and the patients. There are some seriously strange things going on here. I'm pretty sure 2 of the patients are dead and maybe even the clerk.
Oh, yeah. I kind of just gave up on worrying about that.
Well, just keep your eyes open, I suppose. What were you doing again?
Jeremy made a pact with the Dark Man to keep all the madness locked inside Dorsetto.
Alright.
I'm gonna break it. I just have... Where is it? Where's the talisman?
It's around your neck?
Ah!
I worry, Detective.
Don't, I'm fine.
I worry that you're not much help on this case. At least you're a good distraction.
Trust me. You're getting your money's worth. At this rate, I'm an absolute bargain.
Besides the change of dialogue and one gameplay segment, the character selection basically decides who is going to be perceived as the retard. But what does that mean? Well, the creators said they were inspired by Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 when creating this game. Resident Evil 3 was utter shit, but hey, at least it was shorter. In Resident Evil 2 you have the scenarios that allegedly are different. No matter which character you pick first for scenario A or B, the campaign is mostly the same the other way around. Scenario B mostly changes some enemy placements and Mr. X shows up next to the STARS office without somehow breaking or opening the locked door. Somehow both Leon and Claire fight the same bosses in the same places, which would technically mean that these bosses get killed multiple times by 2 different people at the same time. What I'm trying to say is that Resident Evil 2 did this better. Scenario B also unlocks the full ending, which is cool, I guess. Resident Evil's story is so fucking shit. They attempted and very poorly executed the idea. In Alone in the Dark, the creators attempted something, forgot about it, and only remembered that these are 2 different people about 3/4 into the game. In Resident Evil 2 both scenarios happen, even though that makes no fucking sense, while here the character you pick determines what events transpire. There is barely any difference between the places you go to, the puzzles you solve, or who you talk to. The most significant difference happens in Chapter 4. Whatever character you play as will experience a vision representing their guilt and painful memories. This is the only time in the game where both characters try acting like humans. What devalues these scenes is the fact that if you pick Edward, then Emily doesn't experience her vision and vice versa. But let's talk a bit more about our intrepid heroes and what they are doing. Edward Carnby is a private investigator who drinks a lot and is feeling guilty about a case where he failed to save a child. He is also kinda dumb. There's a couple of times in the game where strangers offer him drinks and he just accepts. Even though he is very much aware that this whole place is fucking nuts. His vision represents the guilt that he feels from failing that case that he doesn't remember. A lady hired Edward to find her husband who sold her precious painting and also kidnapped their daughter. Throughout this vision, Edward constantly is like, what was I doing here? I can't even remember. Which is very strange, considering he feels so guilty about this whole ordeal. But the one moment I would praise is that when he learns that the father and the daughter are still in the drowning car, he instantly wants to save them. That's cool and all, but he is very much aware that this is not real. Nonetheless, it's always a cool and quick characterization method when a character saves people in danger. Something sorely missing from other things. We need to raise the bridge so that we can swim on a boat to the car. It takes us so long to do this that they would be already dead IRL, but fine. The moment was ruined by a bug where I didn't have any melee weapon to cut the tentacles of the bridge, but the game thought I did. Reloading a checkpoint helps, but this happens more often than you'd like. The game is very poorly optimized, and even though I very much excel the recommended specs, the game just clunked constantly. But hey, let's not get off topic for now. We get to the car, Edward reaches in to grab the father, but he is dragged in as well, falls out of a bathtub, back to Dorsetto, and we're back to the alien world, and the good scene is over.
Hey, Detective. Mr. Carnby. I'm really worried about you.
I'm okay. I just need to catch my breath for a moment.
This place? There are some very disturbed figures around here, and I don't think it's just the patients. I've been reading some things about how Dorsetto has a deranging effect on people. I think it might explain things.
What?
Emily's vision is probably the best scene in the game. Emily's husband has died fighting in World War I. She could never move on from that. We go through a World War I trench trying to find her husband while sneaking around blind monsters. Although I'm not totally sure that they are blind since most enemies in this game are retarded. While I do want to give the game some credit for trying, this scene looks so fucking funny.
John?
Losses in France. The brave men fallen on these
John.
fields. Forever be
Oh,
as
John.
defenders not of just Europe, but the world.
What's the matter, Emily?
President Woodrow Wilson spoke to our
I can't do
country's
this.
war widows, asking them to stand tall.
What's the matter?
for their husbands.
I can't take you dying again.
Speak of them proudly, and remember
I'm
them
still
fondly.
hurting.
What's the matter,
But
Emily?
the war effort in Europe is not our
Your death was just so
death numbers on the home front
Shameful.
are on the rise due to
unfair.
the influenza known as the Spanish flu. The New Orleans City Council decided to open yet another emergency hospital in the old Dorsetto plantation.
We get teleported to a morgue where we need to put together a map of the morgue to find Emily's husband. Here we learn the truth of her husband's death. He never died in the war because he had the Spanish flu. Emily was ashamed of him and stopped visiting. Now she can't move on from that guilt. She made up the heroic death to somehow cope with her shame. The dialogue is a bit too overt and the acting is but it's good.
I didn't know this is where you would end up. I didn't want to know. I stopped visiting you because I couldn't stand the indignity of your awful illness. I was ashamed of you. Ashamed of myself. Forgive me. Please, John. Let me go.
I really wish the rest of the game was even approaching this. There is a really good story somewhere in here. Maybe it's hidden in the hundreds of papers you pick up, of which like 5 are actually needed. I already said how the character selection devalues these scenes, but it also damages the characters. No matter who you pick, the other will just fuck around the mansion for the whole game and think the playable one is retarded. They don't have a relationship because they barely interact with each other, and the interactions mostly serve as a frustration.
Hey, Mr. Carnby?
What?
Nothing, right?
It's a closet?
That's right, Detective. I'll see you later. I have to finish this.
You're going inside the closet?
I know what it looks like, but I can't explain it, much less justify it.
All right. You do what you have to do, miss. Miss Hartwood, I think you're gonna want to see this.
Is there something in the closet?
Yeah, there is. You don't see the very obvious gate leading to whatever Jeremy's madness is serving up next?
I don't understand. Are you making some kind of fashion metaphor? I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. Can you just tell me what you're doing?
You don't see this!
It's fine. It's fine. Catch you later.
Are you going inside the closet?
Yeah. Got a problem with that?
No. Do what you think is right, Detective.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. Goodbye, Miss Hartwood.
Also, there are several references as to the fact that maybe the playable character was a patient at Derceto. This is also really strange because you find an empty room and whatever character you are playing as will say that it was their room. I guess that would kinda support why they are aliens with no feelings and interesting thoughts, but it's just really lame that one press of a button at the beginning of the game determines what actually happens. It's also weird from a writing standpoint. Why would you write two extremely similar scripts that are basically interchangeable? We still visit the same places and do the same things besides one puzzle and one vision. Also, Emily gets access to the shotgun much quicker for some reason. The plot revolves around Emily or Edward trying to find Emily's uncle, who is a patient at Derceto. Turns out he agreed to a pact with the Dark Man. We experience Jeremy's memories of how that happened. The people working at Derceto also appear in them, and they also act as if this is fine, just another regular day. I want to talk about a specific segment of the game where we meet the Dark Man. He shows up and stands there, or looks for a good book. If you get close to him, you get damaged. So, I want to ask a question. Most of the time when you're playing a game and get damaged, you probably did something wrong. If I get close to this guy and die, I probably shouldn't approach him, right? Well, no, you actually have to sacrifice over half of your health to get past this one dude. What a fucking weird moment. The Dark Man don't chase you or do anything, they just fuck around. But hey, you can kill yourself, so that's fun. I wish this game would let me hang myself, but the prompt doesn't work. Even the enemies don't want to kill me. You truly are inspired by Resident Evil when you create obvious lines after which enemies stop being aggressive. I managed to get one of the monsters through the line and he wasn't really feeling well. Enemies are either super bullet spongy or die one hit. It's very inconsistent, and in a survival horror game every bullet counts. Allegedly. For some reason, they decided to give us a cap on how much ammo we can carry, but in boss fights you get stashes with unlimited ammo? Isn't one of the most important things in an alleged survival horror game managing your ammunition? Hey, are you playing really well? Well, fuck you! Here is a cap on how much ammo you can carry, but we will never let you run out. There is ammo pretty much everywhere. This is like basic survival horror stuff, rewarding the player for exploring by giving them more ammo. Here, exploring just wastes your time. What is the point of saving ammo and playing well when I know I won't run out ever? I played the game on hard and was challenged? Never. Even the boss fights were incredibly easy. I will even show you one. This is hard mode, and the boss couldn't even last a minute. The dodge mechanic is so fucking OP, it lets you skip most of the fights. At least you can run away from the shitty combat. The final boss is this thing. We begin the fight with it below us. It slams its tentacles and spits goo that I think is supposed to damage you. I don't know, this fight is really shit. Once the floor collapses, it starts spawning other normal enemies who can go through him, and you can go through him. I died once in this fight due to whatever that was. This is unacceptable. Well, at least he has a cool track. The most difficult enemy in this game is the terrain. You will constantly get stuck on it. We thought we figured out stairs years ago. You can also sneak around the enemies. Trust me, it's a waste of time and none of them can catch up if you run. The puzzles are composed of fixing some pictures and putting the right numbers on your talisman. They are fine first time around, but it just gets dull the more you go on. As long as you are smart enough to look at a picture and put the numbers from that picture onto a talisman, you will be fine. I said an 8-year-old would laugh at this. The game is called Alone in the Dark, but there is only like 2 moments in the game when it is truly dark. The people that call this game a horror are lying to you. You really feel the disappointment when you see a cool looking environment, of which there is plenty. The game can look downright gorgeous at times, which only increases my disappointment for what could have been a truly fantastic video game. Also, the fact that it's so shit didn't stop them from creating paid DLC like the digital art book. Yes, please! It's genuinely sad how badly this game turned out, but hey, plenty of people will continue to praise mediocrity. Just look at how many loved Alan Wake 2 or Resident Evil Village, which are still worse than this game. I love horror and I want more horror games, but unfortunately there is barely any redeeming aspects to this game. It fails at almost everything it sets out to do. Few good scenes and pretty visuals can only get you so far. Both playthroughs took me only 10 hours and it was mostly a chore. Besides Infinite Wealth, this was the only game I was looking forward to this year. Now all I have left is Hellblade 2, which is a sequel to a game that didn't need a sequel, but hey, it might be good. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Jeremy made a pact with the Dark Man to keep all the madness locked inside Derceto.
Alright,